Good morning, everyone. I'm just giving a moment to some folks to give some people an ability to join because we're having a lot of people joining us. Once that slows down, we will get started. Happy Thursday, everybody.
Finally feels like fall. It's cool. It was cool yesterday.
Yeah.
I know, I'm excited. All right. All right, I think we are good to go ahead and get started. So with that being said, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you here for our webinar, AI and Construction and Real Estate Going Beyond the Buzz. My name is Lauren Langer, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. Before we dive in, I'd be honored to introduce our presenter, Ann Balduzzi. Ann is a recognized AI expert and one of the DC region's top women in tech. With an extensive experience in optimizing operational efficiency, mitigating risks with AI, she has held key roles with industry giants like Apple and AOL. Ann is also the founder of the award-winning platform SameGrain, and she holds a patent in data match analysis. Today, Ann will be taking us beyond the buzz and into the AI practical applications for real-world use that will benefit your organization. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Please keep your microphones on mute throughout the presentation so that we don't have any background noise. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Zoom chat to submit them directly to me. I'll be collecting all of those and I will read them off to Ann at the end of our presentation during the Q&A. So feel free to submit them during the process. But with that being said, Ann, take it away.
Great. Thank you for having me here today. I've actually been talking about the future of AI for about 20 years now. And that future has now become, the time we're living in right now. So it's really exciting to be able to share everything I've learned over that time frame, and also some use cases and things that are going to move us all forward in the future. But because AI is growing so incredibly fast, I do like to start all my presentations off with a bit of a disclaimer, and that is that the information you're going to hear about today may soon be out of date. And this is simply because AI is moving at an exponential pace. And one of the things that I also like to start out with pointing out is that we are about to move into an era of technological innovation that we have never experienced before in the history of humans, the history of humanity, and also the history of business. It's likely to be more transformative than the invention of electricity, the Industrial Revolution, and even the introduction of the internet. In fact, I believe it's going to be more transformative than all three of those massive shifts combined. And this is going to unlock unprecedented potential for all kinds of different innovations, all kinds of progress and productivity. But we also have to keep in mind that this is actually growing exponentially. And what I mean by that is to kind of help you wrap your arms around what exponential growth looks like. I always like to kind of do this little bit of an exercise because it helps people understand kind of what exponential growth really looks like and feels like. So just imagine right now, wherever you happen to be seated, just look around you and imagine if you were to take 30 linear steps in any one direction. It might take you to the other side of your room or into a hallway or another room, but you can pretty easily calculate what 30 steps looks like. But now I want you to take that thinking a step further and imagine what 30 exponential steps would look like. That might take you to the other side of the building. You might be thinking it's going to take you to the other side of town, the other side of your state, or even the other side of the country. But in reality, 30 exponential steps would take you almost to the moon. And that's what exponential growth looks like. And that helps you kind of to fathom the kinds of shifts and change that we will all be going through over these next several years. But AI has not been an overnight success. In fact, it has gradually grown over the past 70 years. And we are in a stage of AI right now that we've been in for quite some time, and that's referred to as artificial narrow intelligence. And this is simply where the AI is augmenting the intelligence of humans. And we've been in this era for quite some time. It's a lot of narrow use cases for using these AI applications. And now Ray Kurzweil is one of the kind of big predictors in the AI space. He's been pretty accurate with his predictions up to this point, and he's forecasting that we'll reach the next stage of AI sometime before the end of this decade. It could go a little past that, but we're roughly talking, sometime definitely within the next decade. And that stage is referred to as artificial general intelligence. And that's where the AI is equal to the human mind or human intelligence. In other words, it's thinking horizontally and vertically. And what's interesting about that is in that stage, which is, often referred to as AGI, and you're going to hear more and more buzz about AGI, but that's where you actually could have somebody working next to you that is this AGI intelligence that has kind of PhD intelligence that can really assist you in your day-to-day work life. And then the final stage of AI is where a lot of people kind of, when they hear the term artificial intelligence, sometimes they just jump to that final stage because it's been forecasted so often in sci-fi movies like The Terminator. And usually it's a very dystopian future that's predicted. And that's the superior intelligence is simply when the AI is smarter than humans and it knows it. Now, this doesn't necessarily, by the way, we may never get to that phase. We may be able to manage AI so that we never get to that final phase, or we be able to manage it in a way that final phase actually creates a very utopian future for all of us, where diseases are all cured, where we might even have global warming cured, and pretty much all the problems of the world might be solved. So that's a very more and more researchers are sort of leaning into more of a utopian outlook if we ever were to get to that stage. But that's a long way off. And the only reason I mention it is because when your employees hear the term artificial intelligence, many of them are going to get this fear, kind of within them, because they're only thinking of the way Hollywood has portrayed that stage of AI. And that's not true, at least not in the stage we're in right now. And actually, when you hear about some of the other concerns that you need to be concerned about today, it'll sort of put things in perspective. And I'll talk about that at the end of my talk today. The next thing I want to kind of share is the timeline and history of AI. And this just will help to put things into perspective as you're understanding how we got to where we are today. AI actually got started in 1950. Alan Turing, who's a great computer scientist, actually kind of invented the computer, and some people believe. He actually developed this kind of idea for AI. But the growth of AI from roughly 1950 to 1998, which is a fairly long period of time, was really hindered because we didn't have the computational power to get it going. We didn't have enough data for it to be trained off of. The algorithms weren't that sophisticated. And frankly, the investors, the funding community, wasn't really that interested in it. They didn't see much promise with it. So they didn't throw money at it like they do today. And as a result, things just staggered and kind of, moved along in a very slow pace. There was a time kind of what that was called the AI winter, where things were a little bit slow, not a lot of innovations going on then. But Apple put out a video back in roughly 1988 that gave their vision of the future of AI. And it's called Apple Knowledge Navigator. If you want to check out the video, you can usually find it on YouTube. But it's a very grainy old video. But what's cool about it is it's actually predicting what the future of AI might look like. And if you think of where we are today, we're pretty close to what that future was being portrayed as way back in that 1988 timeframe. And then the next phase of AI was where what we call kind of the era of classifying and tagging data. And this was really training the AI and moving towards this deep learning infrastructure. And what a lot of the researchers did during this time frame, and this was roughly 1999 to 2017 or somewhere about that, is they built AI solutions that could play humans in popular games like chess. You had IBM's Watson beating humans on the Jeopardy show, if anybody recalls that. And then more recently, you had DeepMind, excuse me, which is owned by Google, created something called AlphaGo. And AlphaGo was developed around the game of Go. And for those of you who are not familiar with the game of Go, it's the longest continuously played game in the history of humanity. It's been played for 2,500 years consecutively. And there are more moves in the game of Go than there are atoms in the observable universe. So it's a highly, highly complex game. And so it was a big challenge for the DeepMind team to bring their researchers together and try to actually, beat the number one human at the time in that game. And so AI went ahead and actually did that. In fact, it beat several leading players at the time. And then they did something, it took it a step further, and they created what was called AlphaGo Zero. And that's where they stripped out all the learning that it had been trained on and simply gave it the rules of the game and told it to play itself. And within a matter of weeks, it had achieved what had earlier taken years for the researchers to get it to that stage of knowledge. And so this was a really big moment in the history of AI. In fact, there's a great documentary on it in Netflix. And one of the things that was really noticed, and a man by the name of Demis Hassabis, who headed Google's DeepMind at the time, he actually said, it's like a, kind of almost like an alien playing the game, because it was thinking in ways in which no human had ever thought to make moves in that game. So it was definitely thinking not just outside the box in the way humans think outside the box, but it was thinking way outside the box and creating plays that just seemed unimaginable at the time. So this is the way in which you'll hear me reference this later, because this is the way in which AI can assist us. It can give us new ways to think about problems that we may have never thought about before. And that brings us to sort of the current age and era of AI. And this was a shift thanks to the creation of a transformer architecture, roughly 2018. That's when we began to move into this new era of AI, or the generative AI era, with large language models. And this was a massive movement. In fact, all the researchers that have been working on all the other fractured ways of using AI started to then come together around generative AI, seeing that as sort of the more perfect way in which to create these solutions. And a lot of innovations occurred just in the last few years. For example, DeepMind, again, which has been acquired by Google, they created something called AlphaFold. And AlphaFold was actually designed, solved what was called the protein folding problem. And the protein folding problem was a problem that, no human had ever been able to solve. And so they came in and actually won a competition by solving that problem. And that has unlocked all kinds of new innovations in the area of computational biology. It's creating new vaccines. It's creating new medicines. So it's creating new synthetic products even. It's creating objects and products that capture carbon out of the air. It's creating enzymes that can eat plastics. So this is really a lot of new innovations, and new perhaps building materials may even come out of some of those innovations. And then we move into 2024, and this is, was an explosion just over the last year or two. Since the introduction of ChatGPT, we have seen a massive explosion of large language models, and I'll talk more about those in a minute. So basically, just in kind of encapsulating, I talked about all those fractured efforts, and now where all these fractured efforts are united around these large language models, which work off of text prompts. So you can type in text now and get a report, a press release, a poem. You can type in something as a text prompt and also get programming code or images or video or music or audio. You can get translations. You can set up robot instructions, and the list goes on and on and on. And now this has even taken another step forward, and that is allowing you to actually talk text. So you're basically talking to these large language models. So instead of a graphic user interface, you're going to start to see a movement towards a language user interface where these, AI solutions are simply you're able to converse directly with it. And that's something that exists today. And that's what we call multimodal use cases. And visuals and things like that are also being added to the other ways in which we can connect with these large language models. So when we just look at the visual side of AI, it's worth noting and giving you some perspective on how these models had to be trained over these decades. And they essentially, we as humans can easily look at these images and clearly know the difference between a blueberry muffin and a Chihuahua dog. But an AI that has never seen either of these objects has no clue what's what. So what they've had to do, and this is true for just about everything, you can visualize, they had to train it with thousands of images of Chihuahua dogs and thousands of images of blueberry muffins. And by doing that, it eventually over time, it allows the AI to distinguish between these two items. And now with a quick prompt, I can type in a prompt and say, hey, create an image of a blueberry Chihuahua dog. And there you go. You got a blueberry muffin Chihuahua dog. And I can even now take it a step further if I wanted to, and I can make this dog talk, or I could make this dog walk around the screen or jump and do different things, all based on a text prompt with using one of the either image generators or the video generators. So there's lots of different tools in place that have taken this side of AI to all kinds of new heights, which is actually creating a lot of opportunities for marketing people along the way. So while AI has taken over 70 years to get to where we are today, prompt engineering has only recently arrived, and it's actually becoming a very important part of how you work and engage with these large language models. And these are just 4 of sort of the more popular large language models. There's actually probably over 100 large language models that you can work with. And there's even more than these top 4 as far as popular ones go. But I'm going to mention these 4 just because we're a little limited on time and I don't want to dive too far into this. But I think most of you are familiar with GPT, ChatGPT rather. This was created by a company named OpenAI. It is multimodal, meaning that you can talk to it, at least in the latest version that was just released. And you can also very soon, you're going to be able to open your phone up from the app and be able to show it an image, and that image will you will actually understand what you're looking at and be able to converse about that as well. So if you're, showing it something that might have been a broken piece of machinery or something that needs to be fixed, it could then reference how you might fix that product. And so there's all kinds of really interesting use cases. GPT is connected to the internet, so it has a lot of up-to-date information. There's also a custom GPT store where people have preloaded prompts on a wide range of topics, so that it's really taken the effort of creating that perfect prompt out of the equation, and you can just use an existing GPT to get the answer you may be looking for. And then the next one that is growing in popularity, in fact, it's sometimes outperforming ChatGPT, and that is called Claude 3.5 Sonnet. This is by a company named Anthropic, and they've created a really interesting kind of collaborative work environment. And it's nice. It's specifically good at coding. So if you type in a text, it can create code for you in all different kinds of coding languages. And it can also transcribe text from what might be an imperfect image. So these have a lot of interesting capabilities for retail, logistics, financial services, and more and more people I've seen are moving towards Claude 3.5. It too is free, by the way. Just simply because it provides an alternative to ChatGPT. But another alternative is Gemini 1.5. And this too is growing in its multimodal capabilities. But what's interesting about Gemini 1.5 is it has a 1 million token context window. And what I mean by that is that the window in which you would put your prompt, you can actually put 1 million tokens in that. So what that means is you could upload roughly an hour-long video. You could upload 11 hours of audio, or you could upload over 700,000 text, character words. And that's roughly about 3/4 of the Harry Potter series, if you were trying to imagine what 700,000 words looks like. So that's a large prompt. Most of the time we're dealing with very small, concise prompts. But the direction that all of these large language models are moving in is to create these very, very large context windows. And that creates a whole new way in which you can use and utilize these large language models. And then finally, there's Meta, which if you're not familiar with Meta, they are the parents of Instagram and Facebook, but they also are the parent of Llama 3.1. And this is an open source large language model. Gemini, Claude, and GPT-4, they're all closed. And there are other open large language models, but Llama 3.1 is one of the latest versions. It's probably one of the best performing versions. And what it allows users to do is basically customize the large language model for their own use case purposes. And they can actually go in and change parts of it because the architecture is customizable. And that's really going to create another area of use cases for utilizing these large language models. Now, just to illustrate how these large language models have been growing and what to expect in the future with them, we started out, and I'm just going to use ChatGPT because most people are familiar with this one, but this is pretty much the same trajectory for all of these large language models. And that is they started out at sort of the preschooler or adolescent level in their knowledge. That's been growing. When 3.5 was released to the public, that was sort of at the high school level. And then now we're sort of at the college or grad student level. 4.0 is simply giving you enhanced capabilities, but it's still growing along that path. And pretty soon, it's expected either later this year or perhaps next year that we'll see what's called GPT-5. And GPT-5 will be sort of like the extreme pro level of AI. Or of a large language model. And this is going to be at the PhD level. So imagine, again, having that kind of PhD mind that you're able to interact with in a day-to-day work scenario. So that's sort of where we're heading in this trajectory. And then you're also starting to see more and more devices and software products incorporating AI within them. Most of you are probably familiar with Microsoft Copilot. If you're on a Microsoft platform, Copilot is at your disposal right now. Apple intends to be rolling out their version either later this year or sometime next year. And so that's creating more and more opportunities in which to engage with these different AI solutions. And also at the end of you're going to start seeing more and more vendor software solutions that are adding more and more AI intelligence into their products as well. And all of this is adding up to amazing increased productivity. So it can help you write proposals, letters, reports. It can help you with market research, data analysis, even reviewing contracts or budgets. It can help you in a negotiation and finding ways in which to handle any objections. A lot of the meeting recaps are actually being built into most of the online meeting platforms. And then you're going to also, I talked about brainstorming when I like brainstorming new ideas with these tools because when I referenced much earlier, the AlphaGo Zero product where the AI was actually thinking far outside of the box and in ways that humans haven't previously thought of solving a problem. This is a really cool aspect of AI, I think, when you're looking to brainstorm new ideas or truly help you as humans think outside the box. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about all the marketing and PR and social media use cases in a few minutes. But anytime you're dealing with a repetitive task, you can actually incorporate AI into that role and have that save you time over the long haul. So lots of great innovations in that space. So let's dive deeper into some general AI use cases. Customer service is one that is a growing area of AI. You're going to start to see this more and more with other companies. Airlines are starting to use it. And it basically is an agent or a chatbot that can seamlessly converse or through text or sometimes through language, converse back and forth with your customer base or clients. And they can also speak if needed. You can have these chatbots speak in any language or dialect. So this not only speeds up any response times, but if you have customer service people, it's also going to free up your staff to handle far more complex issues. Or if you don't feel comfortable having that AI interface directly with your client base, you can also just have it directly interact with your staff so that they can respond faster and more consistently to any kind of inquiries they might be receiving. And this is all going to be based on your own data, your own website perhaps, or any other content that you choose to train this type of AI on. So it's really an interesting opportunity that we're going to see more and more evolving. Then there's human resources. This is going to help with onboarding, training. You can even develop training that is personalized to a specific job role. You can use those kind of virtual assistants, similar to the customer services chatbot, to help answer questions by employees about vacation time, maybe about safety rules or even regulations. And again, this is creating the consistent dissemination of information, which oftentimes gets very fractured over time. And this allows you to make sure everybody is trained on the same elements and has access to the same information. And then ultimately, performance management. This is another big HR area where you're using the AI analytics and tools to analyze employee performance data. So you can identify trends with that employee or with that department. You can also help use that data to provide actionable insights to managers. And this is all going to help in setting more accurate performance goals and also identifying areas for improvement. And then sales, proposals, lots of different use cases here. Many of your employees actually may already be using it for helping them draft, emails and messages. These can be very personalized and tailored to individuals based on their industry or based on the specific needs of the recipient. Also, when you're looking for leads, you can be using these tools to help identify the best prospects based on a pool of applicants or pool of potential clients. And then there's custom proposal templates. This is another easy area where AI can assist. And then diving a little deeper into the marketing and PR, this is where you can certainly personalize and target all of your marketing efforts in a far more efficient and effective way. And it seems like it might take extra work and extra steps to do that, but it actually over time will save time. And then if your website, if you've ever been using SEO experts to help with search engine optimization, you can simply put your website copy into these large language models and ask it to make recommendations on how to improve your search engine optimization. And that's a really interesting use case that we've been seeing evolve. And then finally, the images and video. You saw at the very beginning how I was quickly able to create an image of that blueberry muffin Chihuahua dog. Well, you can essentially create all kinds of images. In fact, photorealistic images, and also videos. So you can create commercial grade videos, whether you want to use those in websites, newsletters, press releases, or just simply put them up on your social media. This, again, a lot of these tools are free to use. The images that you generate are free for the most part. And this is going to dramatically reduce your marketing costs over time. Now, if we go a little bit deeper into more construction and real estate AI use cases, we've got everything from tenant management, analyzing credit scores, rental histories, social media activity, to just make sure that you're dealing with the most reliable information at the time as far as looking at new tenants. Lease optimization. This can be done looking at the optimal lease strategies or when you should make rent adjustments or lease renewals and the timing of that. Portfolio management, kind of taking a more holistic view of everything within your portfolio. And then personalized services, where you can actually tailor any amenities or recommendations based on preferences and behavior. And this, again, creates a better engagement scenario with your audience. And then on the construction side, there's all kinds of interesting AI opportunities here. Design and planning is a big one. Just making sure that you're optimizing your building layouts for efficiency, sustainability, for cost effectiveness. Project management is a far more simplified within this scenario as well. Labor management, we talked about those HR skills where you can also use some of that information to optimize your labor productivity and also reducing the risk of errors and creating new scenarios in which these workers can work within. and customer and stakeholder communications. There's a lot of actually AI is sort of integrating with other technologies such as virtual reality and augmented reality to improve visualizations and help people really understand the progress and the design in which they're going through. And I actually have this video from Geospatial World that is going to talk a little bit more about a digital twin. And that's simply a virtual replica of a physical object or a system. And it's designed to simulate the behavior and performance of that object. So I'm going to go ahead and start this video so you can sort of see this in action. And it starts out with a car, but it really can do, engines, buildings, and it can do sort of the infrastructure, the virtual representation of a building before it's even built. Or even around the surroundings of other buildings. And while it's going to talk about 5 benefits, I'm going to just highlight the first 3 because we've already talked about the last 2. And this is improved planning and design. So when you're looking, working with your engineers and your architects, you can simulate different scenarios, identify potential use cases, even before the building's even built. And then you can also increase your collaboration in talking with people, giving people sort of a real-time view. This is sort of an example of that visualization that I was talking about earlier. And then overall operational efficiency. And this is, using that data to really kind of help you once the building's even completed to help optimize different aspects of that building. And you can also, the other 2 areas were optimizing energy consumption and also reducing costs. But with all the good that comes out of AI, unfortunately, there is some downfalls and dangers and real risks that you need to be aware of before embarking on any of these use cases. And the first one is that AI it hallucinates. And that, if you haven't heard the term hallucinations yet, that is simply the term that the AI world uses to basically signify when the AI is making stuff up. In other words, when the answer that you're getting is outright false or it just simply doesn't make sense. And this can be caused by a number of different reasons. I'm seeing it more and more caused by a bad prompt, so that it's just trying to fill in a knowledge gap when it can't find that information. And an example of a bad prompt would be like, show me the top 5 ski areas in Western Virginia or something like that. And if it can't come up with that number of ski areas, it's going to make up whatever number it can't find. And that's simply because it's trying to please you. It's trying to give you an answer. But one of the ways you can craft a better prompt is to simply, not put a number around an answer, so that it's sort of free to come up with what it does find. But you also have to be prepared with your critical thinking skills to check the facts, make sure it's looking right. And one of the ways you can help check those facts is to ask the large language model that as part of its response to ask it to cite the references. In other words, where did it pull that information from? And when it does that, even though you have a link there, don't assume just because the link exists that link is also correct. So you got to click on those links and just make sure that the links are going to a real website with real information from a real resource that's respected, that was able to provide that information. Now, my take on hallucinations, having worked with these large language models for several years, is that I've seen it improve dramatically. So my hope is that in the next few years, this will be a very short-lived problem and hallucinations will eventually kind of be non-existent, or at least far less than what they are today. But be mindful of this. Use your critical thinking skills. Your prompts, your responses may not always be correct. Another thing that's unfortunately, hurting the use of these large language models is the fact that there's bias in a lot of the data that it was trained on. And there may even be bias in the data that you have that you may be incorporating or working with when engaging with these large language models. So it's really important, again, to write a very well-crafted prompt so that you can help mitigate those bias responses, and also ideally working with the best data possible, because that's going to help mitigate it as well. And then I like to recommend that you have diverse teams of people look at these AI results or solutions, because they're going to be in a position to better spot any bias that might be showing up in your results. And then another thing to be mindful of is that when you think of large language models, it's such a sophisticated way In other words, the algorithms behind these models are so complex that even humans can't understand how the model actually came up with the result that it came up with. So it's almost like peeling back an onion. And when you peel back that onion, the hope is that you can figure out how it actually came up with that answer. But that onion is so complex that humans can't figure it out. So this is why we call it black box thinking. It's not a physical black box. It's just a term that's used among researchers. But the researchers are now looking for AI to help better understand how those answers were generated. And this will really help to figure out where a bias might show up or where a hallucination might have been generated. And then next up are deep fakes. And I'm showing you a deep fake of myself, just so I'm not putting a deep fake out there of anybody else. But these are getting easier and easier to create. And I'm going to show you a deep fake of me winning a gold or silver medal. And I have never been in the Olympics and I have never won a medal. But within literally a few minutes and for free, I was able to create this video of myself winning a medal.
I'm so excited to be an Olympic gold medalist. I really want to thank all of my supporters.
So looking at that, it's kind of a little janky at times. And you might say, that I could tell that was fake. Well, mind you, I did that for free and within just a few minutes. If I was to spend maybe another 30 or 40 minutes on it, maybe spend a little money, I could have actually done it. So it would be so flawless that you couldn't tell the difference between me talking to you now and what the fake was. And these are going to be happening more and more, and these are going to be happening all throughout different areas of your life. You're going to start to see fakes on social media. You're going to start to see fakes, people calling you and pretending to be your boss or a child or a parent. Because it only takes a few seconds of capturing somebody's voice to actually create these types of fakes. Just a photograph, you can create a video off a photograph as well. And if you actually have video of somebody, you can do all kinds of interesting things with that. So that's why this is getting, becoming a very scary side of AI. And once a fake is seen, it's really hard for people not to believe it was a fake, even if you tell them it's a fake. So be mindful that this is something that, again, you have to use your critical thinking skills to be aware of. And those critical thinking skills are going to happen or be needed even more so when it comes to bad actors that are coming out of the dark web with all kinds of sophisticated spear phishing emails or malware. And this is all happening because just like all the great, wonderful things that are happening in those wonderful use cases that I cited earlier, those bad actors are creating the same amount of use cases that are designed to attack your business. And oftentimes they're going to look for the weakest link, and that typically is just your average employee. So it's really critically important to train your staff. And a lot of training today doesn't incorporate the fact that a phone call or an email is looking exactly like it came from that location. That phone call is going to look like it's coming from your boss. The person on the other end of the line that's talking to you is going to sound exactly like your boss, but it may not, in fact, be your boss. And oftentimes these are going to be these scams are going to be tied around some kind of financial transaction. We've already heard stories of vendors where the vendor may not have been the company itself that was kind of impacted, but the vendor may have been impacted and have been scammed. And so therefore it's very easy for, this kind of, malware to actually connect into their system and send an email to you and then say, hey, here's the new bank routing number for our organization. And if you're not a critically minded thinking employee, you might just go ahead and say, well, the email came directly from the person I always engage with, so it must be true. I would highly recommend people now pick up the phone, call that company, talk to the person that they're normally used to talking to, or call their boss if the boss is calling them and asking them to make a financial transaction, just to make sure that that in fact is true. And then as sort of a public service announcement to everyone, I'm recommending that families go out and leave all their phones and all their electronic devices in a house and walk out to the far corner of their yard or into the woods or a park and come up with a secret passcode or passphrase. And that password or passphrase is what you're never gonna text it to another family member. You're never gonna talk about it in front of any kind of phone or electronic device, because you want to make sure that it's secret only to you. You just store it in your own mind. And that way, if you get some urgent phone call from a family member saying they need you to urgently wire them X amount of dollars, that you ask them what the passcode is. And if they don't know it, then you're likely being scammed. The other thing you can do is simply pick up the phone and call that family member back and make sure, maybe call them back from another phone and make sure that they are okay, so that you're independently confirming that. And that's just a way of protecting you and your business in one of the many scams that we anticipate coming down the line. Another unfortunate side of AI is when people are thinking that they're working with good data, but in fact, their data is compromised in some way. And so if the data isn't healthy, it's actually going to hurt your organization more than it's going to help your organization. In fact, it's going to simply be unreliable, outputs, unusable outputs. So it's critically important to make sure, if you haven't done this yet, this is now more than ever, it's the time to really train your employees on good data hygiene habits, and also make sure you're capturing the right types of data. They're going to be useful to you in the future. And finally, I want to make sure that, and this is probably something I should have started out with talking about first, make sure that your employees are not uploading your own sensitive data to random large language models. A lot of people are playing around with these tools and having a lot of interesting, outcomes with them. But if they are unknowingly putting your company's sensitive data up into these large language models, then they're putting your organization at risk, or at least putting that information out there for everyone to see or share. And so this is something I would make sure that your employees are not doing, or make sure that they're trained not to do as soon as possible. And also but keep in mind, there are ways in which you can work with these large language models or these AI tools where you can work with sensitive data. It's just, you have to make sure that the setups are done in the proper way to make sure it is protected. But the best defense on any of these problems is a strong offense. So one of the things we like to recommend is conducting an AI assessment. And this is really looking into, what is your sensitive information? How is that data currently handled? Is your cybersecurity training up to date? Is it accounting for the fact for these future ways in which people might be scammed? How do you currently access the data? Where is it stored? What's the quality of it? How is it being used? And then looking also at the vendors that you currently have or working with. What is the health of that vendor? How is that software being currently used, and how might they be evolving their AI solutions within that? And how is your data protected in those environments? And then an opportunity analysis. And this is really where things get, you can help with the brainstorming, and that's looking at all the different potential use cases. And by the way, there are hundreds and hundreds of different use cases for every company, but you want to make sure that you can visualize them almost like on a matrix, where you can see the ones that the AI use cases that are going to be the easiest to implement, or at least the easiest to get started, and the ones that are going to pull back and bring back the most potential as well. And this takes a large amount of analysis at the end of the day. Also, I like to recommend that companies create an AI governance model. And this allows you as an organization to manage all the risks that we've talked about alongside the innovations. And you don't want to just say, oh, no, the risks are too big, I'm not going to innovate, because all your competitors are going to be innovating. So you're almost going to be forced down this path. But it's important to make sure that as you're moving in this direction, as you're evolving, with these AI solutions, that you're also making sure to manage those risks along the way. And that goes into, making sure that the model and aligns with your principles, that you've got all kinds of fairness, transparency, and accountability that is wrapped around all of these AI initiatives that you may embark on. And I also recommend creating an oversight committee. And this can be made up of different members throughout your organization. And they can meet and actually look at, sort of the overall holistic view of how these AI initiatives might unfold within your organization. And then bias and fairness, implementing different processes for making sure that you regularly audit your AI systems. And then transparency, make sure you're clearly communicating with staff, clients, on how your AI is being used, on the benefits of its use, and also its limitations. And then this is all of these models. In fact, all of the, everything I'm suggesting today is not going to be a one and done. I wish it was. I wish it was easy enough that you could say, oh yeah, I checked the AI box and now our company's good. AI is evolving again at that exponential pace that we talked about earlier. So anything you build and create is going to constantly need to be changed and updated as the technology changes and evolves. So this is unfortunately going to be a business transformation timeframe that we're going to be in for the next several years. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you want to have this creating an AI roadmap. You also want it to be a top-down approach so that you're really having your top executives kind of orchestrating these initiatives. And the reason I say that is you may actually right now, there may be employees somewhere in the bottom ranks of your organization that are building their own AI solutions from the ground up. And that might sound great, but it may not actually, may not have been evaluated fully. It may not be working in the ways that it needs to work to align with your business goals. And it might not even be the right use cases for a solution. So it really needs to be a top-down approach, and you want to make sure that when you're making these, developing these use cases, that you're ensuring that you're working with high-quality data, and it's relevant data as well. Ideally, over time, you want to make sure, if you don't already have this kind of team in place, you want to build a team of cyber experts, data experts, AI experts, and also people who are experts in the software products like Copilot. Now, if you don't have people on your team already with expertise in all of these different areas, you definitely want to work with outside experts in that space, because the outside experts are going to be able to have that holistic view of your scenario and be able to look at it from a cyber, data, and AI perspective, as well as from the perspective of the software solutions that you might be working with. And then you want to be in a position where you're, building these pilots. You don't want to just build it and put it right directly out there. You definitely want to have sort of a closed pilot to test drive, making sure that everything's working the way you want it to work, and then scale the effective ones, the ones that are actually working. You want to scale those solutions. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you want to avoid what we call pilot purgatory, because that's just where you put a lot of pilots out there and nothing ever sees the light of day. The goal is to actually make sure these solutions are working for you in the long run. And then finally, it's worth noting that I've talked a lot about the fact that this is going to be a very transformative period. We're all going to be kind of lifelong learners at this stage of AI. So it's important that, you experiment and learn. You try to become as educated as you possibly can on this subject. And one of the ways in doing that is to simply go out there and start using the free versions or the free tokens or the free trials of a lot of these AI solutions and see which tools best fit your needs. Also test and experiment with different prompts. There's all kinds of different ways of using prompts. You can even have AI help you craft a better prompt. And this can also help mitigate those bias and hallucinations that I referred to earlier. And then as you become and grow your expertise and increase your productivity, we also want you to share what you learn, because, and maybe that's done over a lunch and learn within your organization. But if people are just learning it and sort of hanging on to what they've learned and not sharing it with their colleagues, that's really not helping to grow the organization as a whole. So you might want to create sort of a culture where people are sharing and exchanging information of what they're learning as you grow in this new AI age. And with that said, we will open it up to some Q&A.
Sorry about that. Took a minute for me to press the button there. So with that being said, please use the chat to go ahead and submit some questions as you have them for Anne. I will go ahead and start reading them off to her. Starting off, first question for us, Anne, is it okay to adapt an AI policy that we found online for our organization, or are there any dangers we should be aware of?
Yeah, definitely dangers. AI policies are really specific to an organization. They really need to, kind of balance out with what your organization's goals are, what your mission is, how, what your culture is, and all of that needs to really be customized. So you want to work with experts, or people that have drafted lots of different AI policies so that you can really understand how the nuances within the policy itself. If you just go off on the internet or even use an AI to help draft an AI policy, it might work as a foundational piece, but it's not going to be customized to your organization, and it's really not going to cover all the areas that likely need to be covered through that policy.
Wonderful. The next one we have here is there's so many new AI tools coming out. What's the best way for us to manage our staff's excitement over the new latest trendy tool?
Yeah, so there's always going to be new tools. In fact, there's dozens of them that launch every day. So it's in your staff are going to come across them in all different ways and different avenues. But you really, before you get locked into any one of these tools, you really have to look at the company behind the tool. How healthy is that company? Some of these tools, by the way, are being launched by individuals out of their garage. So you have to make sure that that company is actually going to be around for the future. If you're putting a lot of your information or your data, you want to make sure it's protected. So there's a lot of analysis and research that goes into, every tool that you would maybe integrate into your operations. And the healthier the tool, the healthier the company behind the tool, the more likely that company is going to be around for the future for you.
Wonderful. Our next one here is, you mentioned bad data is a problem. How do we know if our data is or isn't reliable? And what is the best first step if we need to improve that data gathering process?
Yeah, so when it comes to evaluating your data, it's one of those things that's best done by an outside entity. And the reason I say that is because you're sort of, most people, are, you're working within kind of a bubble in a way within your own organization, and you're viewing that data and information just maybe from one or two different perspectives. But if you bring in an outside experts that can look at that data, they can actually put kind of a new vision or new eyes on that information, and be able to identify maybe bias data or data that might not be as healthy as it should be. So it's always good to get that outside perspective, because sometimes just when you internally look at something that you see and work with every day, you sometimes can't spot it. You get blind to the data problems.
Wonderful. Next one would be, how can we measure the success of an AI initiative? What kind of KPI should we be tracking?
Yeah, so this is an area where actually you can perhaps utilize a little bit of AI. It also helps to get some outside advice as well. But when you comes to your KPIs, you can sort of look at all the different data that you have in place, and then look at the sort of the objectives. What are the goals you want to reach, and then have you can work with these large language models to even help you craft KPIs that are going to best capture the data and information you need to measure the success of any one program or use case. And it is always good to start with baseline data, before you launch anything or do anything, kind of track that initial data set and then watch it, track it as it grows. And by tracking it as it grows and making sure you're tracking the correct KPIs that are actually going to matter for your business, that's going to give you the best results in the long run.
Wonderful. The next one here is, you talked a lot about prompts and prompt writing. What makes the perfect prompt?
Yeah, so this is actually a kind of a growing and shifting space, but right now, given the different types of prompts that people can put in, I always like to, if you're really stuck on how to craft a prompt, you can actually have the AI help you draft a prompt. And sometimes that works. The other thing you can do is give it examples. In fact, you sort of want to stair step your prompt. You don't want to give it too much information all at the same time. I always like to start prompts off by telling the AI to imagine it's an expert. So you could say, imagine you're an expert in the construction industry or something to that effect. And then put in your, kind of question that you're looking for after that. And if you want to, if it's a really deep answer that you're looking for, you can also upload prior to asking the question. You can have it learn from other materials or other documents and even give you a response in the style of a document or something else that you might have already had, and then say, looking at this information that you've attached, give me a response that sort of follows the same style. And then also don't forget to have it cite references. Some of the large language models are automatically doing this now, but it's always good to put that in your prompt to make sure that you get those references cited so that you can easily click on them and make sure it's not hallucinating. But again, I would, the shorter prompts tend to work better so that you're not overclouding kind of the AI's mind at the time.
All right. I think that's all for the questions that we have. So thank you so much, Anne, for that insightful presentation. And thanks to everyone for attending today's webinar. We hope everyone found the session very valuable and that it sparked some new ideas on how AI can be integrated into your organization.